Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are watching this out there on the World Wide Web. This is Jeremy Geelan for Syscon TV. We're at 9th Cloud Expo, Silicon Valley. We're up to day 3 now. It's taken me day 3 to get a hold of Pete Malcolm, CEO of Abiquo, because he's got just too much going on. Pete, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
You know that I'm always chasing you down because as this cloud ecosystem matures and as we get to some real revenues and real scores, I always think Abiquo is a great reference account for me. You're the canaries down the cloud computing mine, I think.
Well, nice of you to say so, but yeah, I guess we're pretty much at the forefront of customer deployments. We've been generating revenues from customers for heading for 2 years now. So yeah, I guess we are.
And the canaries in a very robust health, I don't mind adding.
Yeah, singing its song pretty loudly, I think, is where the canary is right now.
Yeah. So let's fill people in. Now, obviously, people have been following the Abiquo story. They're following the cloud computing story. I want to start with the overview. Where are we at, Pete? We talked about on our panel recently this thought that Gartner is saying it's all coming to an end. We've had all the hype now, off down into the trough of disillusion, wait for the next thing. That's not at all true, is it?
I don't think it is. It's certainly not from what we're seeing in terms of both our customer deployments and how they're growing and the rate at which new customers are coming in. We don't see any slowdown right now.
And why is that? Do you think, why would you have a commentator thinking that this is a very short cycle when almost everyone in the industry that I've ever spoken to sees this as really one of the longest plays before we get to the end of this sequence that there's ever been?
That's a good question. I mean, I think what you have to remember is we're only seeing the very beginnings of adoption. The number of companies that have actually adopted cloud up till now, certainly in the enterprise space, is very small. And so, I think the wave really hasn't started. Maybe it's that cloud is such a big thing that the usual principles that Gartner follows just don't apply here. Maybe we should be, maybe it's a subdivision of that, sort of micro units of that, each of which is at their own different stage, and trying to lump it together like that is not going to follow the usual model.
Right. They need to throw away the old playbook. You're right, to look at little sections. The other, I noticed you mentioned it at our panel. The open question is really cloud just virtualization 2.0? What was the answer to that?
Well, I mean, I think we get hung up on the term cloud, and of course we like to get hung up on the term cloud, but the kind of solutions that my company produces are more than a cloud solution. You can see it as the evolution of virtualization 2.0 if you like, and it's how you address the problems that enterprises have with their existing virtualized environments, and the cloud model allows you to do that. Now, that doesn't mean that you've got to go mad and use all of the hybrid cloud bursting, all of that stuff. You don't have to go that far. You can, for example, as an enterprise, deploy your own private cloud and start addressing those virtualization 1.0 issues before you go too far into the cloud side of it. So people need to think of this as a journey to the cloud, rather than we're going to flick a switch tomorrow and all be there.
Well, for people that you have helped flick a switch, whatever speed they go, what would be the best sort of customer reference, not necessarily to toot the Abiquo horn, but just to toot the horn of how real this is and how revenue real it is and how operationally real it is, just in case people still think it's, at that early stage?
Well, we certainly have customers that have deployed the solution and did so in a relatively short space of time, and were getting real value out of it in a very short space of time. And that worked because they didn't try to overcomplicate it. They didn't try to take a giant step. They did it progressively, so they have seen deployment times cut from weeks or months to seconds. Real agility being delivered to their application teams. The secret is to plan carefully, is to make sure you consult all of the stakeholders, and that you deploy a solution that works for all of the stakeholders.
Sometimes I wonder wonder whether we're up against, that problem of the failure of success. It is actually so evident to me that cloud computing lives up to those very basic things, the time to value, the agility. It's because it delivers on them, perhaps, that the whole Gartner model falls down, because this one works.
It delivers if you do it right. If you don't do it right, or if you, we use this term cloud washing, where vendors pretend that their products are cloud enabled, but the same applies to cloud deployments. IT organizations will sometimes deploy what they describe as a cloud without really taking on board what it means to deliver a cloud. And so there's cloud washing on that side as well. And it just doesn't work. A lot of the financial services institutions tried this a couple of years ago. We'll call it a cloud, but it's really just our existing systems with a bit of washing on the top to give it that title. It isn't really cloud in the sense that we would understand it.
And then there's that whole cost-cutting aspect that people emphasize yes or no. But one of the things I know that you said recently was, well, just look at over-provisioning in and of itself, and there alone is what, a 20% saving if a tool like your purveying can get into the transparency of this. We could all be saving money, literally overnight. That would be.
Yeah, I mean, this is a relatively new thing, and to be fair, we haven't sized. 20% was a number one of the panelists in the audience threw out, but we think there is significant over provisioning. We certainly think it could be of that order. It could be larger than that order, and again, as the commentator pointed out, this comes from the old world where you were provisioning physical machines, and you did have to over provision, and some of that experience and way of doing things still exists, and that is it's been carried over. That's what's making this over provision. We think it's a big deal. I think it's too early to quantify exactly what it is, but we've already adjusted our product to put in place mechanisms that we hope will change user behavior and try and address those issues. But I think more research needs to be done in exactly what's there, but certainly from the limited evidence we have, in feedback from customers, one of them said we went out, we analyzed all our virtual machines to find out what their CPU utilization and disk utilization and network utilization was, and we found hundreds, literally more than 20% of them, big customer, that were just idle, and that's a huge saving. If knock 20% off your costs, that's massive.
Let's just send people away at the end of this interview with just in case they didn't understand what Abiquo really is about. Let's send them away with the classic elevator pitch. What is it you're doing so well that's leading you to have revenues for 2 years, that's leading you to be a thought leader? What is it that's driving the success of Abiquo? Well,
I think what drives us is to ensure that we meet the needs of all of the stakeholders, and there are three groups of stakeholders. The IT operations guys who are provisioning the physical infrastructure that builds the cloud wherever it might be, the application and development teams that are consuming it, and the compliance and CFO and those types of guys who care about how those two worlds map to each other. And I think what we do that's different is we consider all of those three stakeholders, and that's what makes our products different, and that's what makes our customer deployments successful, because if you don't balance those, your cloud does not work.
There you are. There's something to bear in mind from the CEO of Abiquo. Go to abiquo.com if you can't get here to Santa Clara. And if you can't do that, they should come to New York, right? See us in New York. Going to join us again, Pete?
Absolutely. Thank you.
See you out there on the World Wide Web, physically in New York in June 2012. Thanks for talking with us, sir. And thank you for joining us out there on the World Wide Web.